She spent her life cleaning other people's floors so her son could walk with his head held high. But on the most important day of his life, it was her he felt ashamed of. The auditorium was absolutely packed. Hundreds of people sat in perfect rows, waiting for the big moment. The lights were dimmed, creating an atmosphere of solemnity that permeated the entire space. The music played softly and elegantly. There was a palpable sense of importance in the air. It was graduation. The kind of day that changes a life, that stays in your memory forever. Donna Lucia sat in the middle of the audience, her hands trembling slightly. The dress I had sewn months ago during the early hours of the morning was impeccable. Simple, yet utterly dignified. Navy blue, the color she had chosen with great care because it enhanced her dark skin tone. Around her neck was a simple necklace a neighbor had given her many years ago. It wasn't gold, but it shone as if it were. His heart shone even brighter. The names began to be called. She searched the stage, stood in the audience, waiting anxiously. Her whole body was waiting for that moment, and then she heard Caio Fernando de Silva, the name of her son. Her only son. The one she had raised alone. Donna Lucia jumped to her feet so quickly she nearly lost her balance. A scream burst from her mouth. Not just any scream. A scream she'd carried for 22 years. It was a scream of early mornings spent sewing clothes to earn pocket money. It was a scream of broom and bucket. It was a scream of every coin saved, every sacrifice made in silence, every promise kept throughout a lifetime of struggle. That's you, son. Well done indeed. Her voice echoed throughout the auditorium. Caio stepped onto the stage, took the diploma with slightly trembling hands, and at that exact moment, looked out at the audience. He saw his mother standing with open arms, her face brimming with pure, genuine joy that came from the depths of her soul. And at that very moment, he felt ashamed. Beside him, his classmates began to smile. They weren't smiles of joy or celebration. It was something else entirely. A gaze that glided over his mother, over the simple, off-brand dress, the way she cried out with innocence, the way she embraced him with her eyes, as if he were the most precious thing in the world, more important than anything. Caio lowered his head. He pretended not to see. He pretended not to recognize her. That moment of pure love was quickly suffocated by an emotion he considered more important at that moment. The opinion of others. Donna Lucia saw it. She clearly saw her son's head move away from her. She saw the distancing happen in real time. She saw the rejection etched in that gesture. And silently, she slowly lowered her arms, as if every inch of movement hurt. She sat back down and remained silent for the rest of the ceremony. The gift still in her hands, a simple watch she had saved coin by coin to buy, a watch he would never know the cost of in sacrifice. Donna Lucia wasn't a woman who complained about life. She was a woman who got things done. And everything she did was for her son. Her story began long before Caio was born, in a time that seemed as distant as another life entirely. She was born into a simple family, too humble for words to describe. Her father worked in a brickyard, carrying heavy bricks from before dawn until dusk, day after day, year after year. Her mother, Donna Aparecida, raised 7 children in a house with no running water or electricity, with only the bare necessities for a dignified existence. She lost her father when she was still a small child, only 10 years old. He fell ill too quickly, in a way no one expected. A flu that turned into pneumonia. There was no money for a doctor. When they finally took him to Santa Casa Hospital, it was too late. She remembers standing in the hospital corridor, her father already gasping for breath, her mother holding his hand as if she could keep him there through willpower. After her father died, life became even harder than before. Donna Aparecida had to work twice as much, sometimes 3 times as much. She began cleaning upscale mansions, cleaning the homes of wealthy people, while her children were left to fend for themselves on the city streets. Lucia was the second oldest of the children. At just 11, she began caring for her younger siblings, while her mother worked away from home. She learned to cook with almost nothing, with ingredients left over, with creativity and necessity. She learned to wash clothes by hand at the street tap. She learned to mend the patched clothes the entire family wore. She learned that dignity isn't about having money, but about working honestly and without complaining. At 18, she met Rodrigo, a true hard-working man, a mechanic by trade, who woke up early every day to go to work. His hands were calloused from his daily work, stained with oil that wouldn't completely wash off even with soap and water. But his heart was soft and gentle. He smiled at her as if she were the most beautiful thing in the world, as if he had found a treasure. They married in a simple ceremony, with few guests, and a lot of genuine love. There was no expensive champagne, just local red wine. There was no cake from a pastry chef, just a homemade cake made by Grandma. But there was everything that mattered, two hearts beating together. They had Caio when she was 21. He was born on a cold July morning, in the rain. Lucia remembers every detail of that day as if it were yesterday. She remembers Rodrigo's face when he saw his son for the first time, when he held him in his arms. She remembers how he cried with joy, in a way that shamed such a strong man. She remembers thinking, now our lives will change. Now we have a purpose greater than ourselves. They were happy, despite being poor. Rodrigo worked in the garage during the day, and at night he went out to repair cars on the street to earn extra money to help with expenses. Lucia cared for Caio with almost religious devotion and cleaned a few houses to supplement the rent. They had little, very little indeed, but they had hope. They had dreams. They believed everything could get better. But life had other plans. Plans that no one was prepared for. When Caio was just 3 years old, Rodrigo died. An accident at the workshop, too fast for warnings, too slow for her to do anything. She was at home, caring for Caio, who was playing on the floor, when the phone rang. A man's voice she didn't recognize, trembling. Are you Rodrigo Silva's wife? She knew in that moment. She knew it by the way his voice trembled. She knew it by the silence that lasted for a few too many seconds. She knew it by every beat of her heart that accelerated in panic. Lucia became a widow overnight, with a young son depending on her and a responsibility the size of the world. She had no time for despair, for regrets, for depression. She didn't have the luxury of lying in bed crying. She had to work. She had to survive. She had to ensure her son ate every day, had clean clothes, and had a better future than her own. She started out as a cleaning lady. She would wake up at 5 in the morning, often while it was still completely dark outside. There was no alarm clock, so she woke only by her body clock, the one that learns to wake up at the same time after so long. She would take 2, sometimes 3 buses to cross the entire city. She would arrive at the mansions and sophisticated apartments of wealthy people who didn't even know her name. I cleaned bathrooms with a brush and bleach that burned my hands burning from the strong chemicals. I cleaned kitchens, removing the grease that accumulated on rich people's pans. I cleaned living rooms carefully, vacuuming expensive rugs I should never have touched. I cleaned garages, sweeping leaves that fell from trees. Her hands became rough, dry from constant contact with harsh chemicals that burned her skin every day. Her knees became calloused from kneeling down to scrub floors until they shone like mirrors. Her back began to complain over time, pain radiating throughout her entire back at night, pain that woke her in the early morning. Caio stayed with a neighbor during the day, a kind woman named Dona Rita who understood his struggle like no one else, who had been through the same thing. Dona Rita charged little, just help, because she had children of her own to raise. Lucia would pick her up at night, place him in her arms while he was still asleep, heavy with sleep, and take him to her small studio apartment in a peripheral neighborhood, a place where people like her lived. He would carefully place him on the bed, cover him with the sheet he had patched several times, each patch a story of short income and need, and whisper to the boy, like a sacred prayer, "You're going to study, my son. You're going to be someone in life. You're not supposed to live the life of a cleaning lady like your mother. You're going to go far, very far. You're going to make a difference in the world. You're going to have opportunities that I never had, that my mother never had." Caio grew up hearing this. He grew up watching his mother come home with her hands red from overwork, marks that wouldn't wash away even with warm water. He grew up watching her silently mend clothes at night, sewing for a few extra bucks to supplement her meager income. He grew up knowing, even if he didn't fully understand at first, that everything he had came from her sweat, that his life was built on his mother's sacrifice, brick by brick, coin by coin, sweat by sweat, and he studied. For real, it wasn't the kind of study forced by obligation. It was love translated into pure dedication. He got high grades, participated in projects, was dedicated, and was the student his teachers held up as an example. There was something about him that shone, and everyone noticed. It was the brilliance of someone with something important to prove. Donna Lucia paid for the private school with great sacrifice. She sold cupcakes at the school gate during recess to other children, cleaned offices at night after spending the whole day cleaning large houses, and pretended not to be tired when she got home, all so that the boy could have a different chance than she did. She remembers a special time when Kyo entered high school. She had landed a job at a high-end dental office in La. She earned more, enough that she didn't have to work 2 jobs at once. Finally, she could sleep a little more, get some rest. When Kyo entered high school, Donna Lucia began cleaning larger, better-paying mansions. She also cleaned dental offices, because they knew she was conscientious. He had said he wanted to go to college, and she knew she'd need all the money she could get. "Every step you climb, my son, I scrubbed it," she would say, without drama, without seeking recognition or praise. Just fact. Reality. Pure and simple truth. As a teenager, Kyo began to notice things that had previously gone unnoticed or that he preferred not to notice. He began to see that his mother was different from the mothers of his schoolmates. They wore beautiful designer clothes, expensive designer shoes, and went to beauty salons and aesthetic clinics. His mother had calloused hands, her hair always tied in a simple bun, and old clothes that she altered herself on the sewing machine inherited from a deceased aunt. There was a distance he couldn't quite name, a separation between his increasingly sophisticated school world and his increasingly simple home world, a chasm that grew wider with each passing year. He began to notice the differences more and more clearly. While his classmates talked about the big houses they lived in, the international trips they took during vacations, and his parents' imported cars, Kyo remained silent. When someone asked where he lived, he would simply say, "Near Central," and quickly change the subject. Lucia noticed all of this. A mother notices every movement, every silence, every change of expression on her son's face. But she didn't complain. She didn't ask him to be ashamed of where he came from. She just kept working, kept dreaming, kept believing he would become someone. He got into university, a public university, highly competitive, incredibly difficult to get into on the first try. Donna Lucia cried with joy the day he received his acceptance letter. She cried like she hadn't cried in years, cried so much that her chest hurt, cried because she saw it confirming everything she had always believed, everything she had sacrificed. "I knew it, my son. I always knew you would make it. That you would pass." At university, Kyo met people unlike anything he had ever seen before. Upper middle class people, children of successful professionals, people who had grown up with privilege from birth. For the first time, he was in an environment where most people were born with more opportunities than he would ever have. This changed him. Gradually, subtly, Kyo began to adapt to that sophisticated world. He learned to speak differently, act differently, think differently. He learned that there were invisible rules that separated people. Donna Lucia continued cleaning, but now also in offices and clinics, because the pay was better. They rarely saw each other. Their lives began to follow different paths, like 2 parallel lines that never meet again. But when they did see each other, there was love. Not always easy to express, but there was. The end of Kyo's senior year has arrived. Graduation. He'd first mentioned it a few months earlier. Casually, as if dismissive. "Mom, there's graduation at the end of the year." Donna Lucia felt her heart beat faster, as if she were reliving the hope of a lifetime at that moment. "Shall I go, son? May I go?" There was a pause. Kyo looked at his cell phone, avoiding his mother's gaze. "Of course you'll go, Mom, but it's important for you to know." There will be a lot of fancy people there. Elite friends, children of important and powerful people. The parents will be wearing expensive clothes, designer brands. You might feel a little uncomfortable. Donna Lucia heard those words, and she began to understand. Or perhaps she began to suspect what was to come. Her son was ashamed of her. Okay, son, I'll be fine. You don't have to worry about me. Yes, Mom, of course. You'll look beautiful, I'm sure. But then came the messages. Lots of messages. Mom, the party is at the most expensive club in town. It's in high. There are friends of my colleagues who are going. Important people, you know. Businessmen, engineers, doctors, judges, people who really have money. You don't need to bring a gift, okay? Nobody brings a gift anyway. We just want you to be there. And Donna Lucia, reading each message slowly, understood each one better. Her son was afraid, deeply afraid of how she would be received, afraid of others' judgment, of those looks that speak without words, afraid of people's reactions to a mother with the hands of a cleaning lady. But she had already decided long ago. She would bring a gift, something that came from the heart. She saved coins for months. She saved from her cleaning jobs, skipping out on things she needed for herself. She stopped buying new clothes, stopping going to the hairdresser, stopping doing little things that could improve her life or ease her heavy routine. She saved every penny as if it were gold. She truly saved. Every coin that entered her purse, she put into a small jar. It came from her daily work. She earned money per day, and every real was counted precisely. When she saw the jar fill up, she felt a small relief in her chest. After 4 months of religiously saving, she had saved 600 reais. It was a lot of money for her. Really a lot. It was almost a whole month's rent. And he bought a watch. A simple but beautiful watch. A Seiko. A watch he would wear when he went out for important job interviews. A watch that would mark the time of a career she had helped build with her own hands. 2 months before graduation, she went to a fabric store. She browsed carefully for hours, touching different fabrics, analyzing colors and qualities as if it were the most important thing in the world, chatting with the saleswoman about what would be best. The saleswoman knew her well, because Lucia stopped by often to buy scrap fabrics to repair the entire family's clothes. Are you preparing something special, Donna Lucia? The saleswoman asked, friendly. It's for my son's graduation. He graduates in December. The saleswoman smiled sincerely. She understood what that meant. She understood because she had children too. She chose a navy blue with a subtle finish, elegant in its pure simplicity. She took it home and began sewing with devotion. The neighbor came to see her while she was working at night. What a beautiful dress, Lucia wear too. It's for my graduation, dear, my Caio's graduation. What an honor. What a blessed mother you are. Donna Lucia smiled, despite a strange feeling already pulsing in her chest. And she sewed with even more care, with almost religious devotion. Each stitch had meaning. Each turn of the needle was a vow of love, a silent prayer of hope and gratitude for the years she had lived. She sewed at night, after working all day until her legs ached, her fingers ached, tired from all the work that day, but she kept sewing without stopping. She thought about Caio. She remembered when he was little, when he would hug her legs, when he came home from work, when he would say, "Mom, you work so hard." Now he was ashamed of her. When she finished, she tried on the dress. It looked beautiful. Simple, yet true. Dignified. She looked at herself in the antique mirror in her room and whispered to herself, even simple, I look beautiful. Because it's his day. Because it's an important day. And I'm his mother. The remaining days passed too slowly. She counted them on her fingers, religiously marking them on the calendar. Caio became increasingly distant. Fewer calls. When he did call, it was always to announce something about the ceremony. The exact time, the precise location, the dress code, formal attire, the reception venue, nothing else. No conversation, no connection, no human warmth. A week earlier, he texted, "Mom, are you really going? A lot of people have confirmed their attendance. It might be hard to find you later. It might be hard for me to get out of there quickly, you know. I have some things I have to do. Donna Lucia, her heart racing with doubt, replied, I will, my son, I certainly will. It's your day. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Even if it were the last thing I did. He received no response. Kaio did not respond for 2 days. The night before graduation, she placed the gift in a small box. She wrapped it in white tissue paper, nothing fancy. Just sincere and pure. She wrapped it with a simple red ribbon she'd saved from a gift she'd received years ago. She placed the dress on the hanger. She ironed it with extreme care, with the same dedication she applied to everything. Every movement of the iron was made with absolute precision. She wanted the dress to be perfect. He fell asleep thinking about his son's face on stage. He fell asleep waiting for that moment. He fell asleep wishing that day would be different, that day would be special. The day has arrived. She woke up early, as she did every day of her life. She took a long, lukewarm shower because she couldn't afford to waste too much hot water. Back then, she still paid for water per use, and she needed to save every liter. She fixed her hair tied in a low bun, as always, because it was practical, and because it gave her the appearance of being well-groomed. She put on a light lipstick, the pale pink Kaio had given her for Mother's Day years ago. She put on the simple necklace with extreme care. She wore the navy blue dress as if she were wearing something sacred, something worthy of respect. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a 52-year-old woman. Her hands were scarred from work, calloused from decades of struggle, with deep wrinkles that told stories of struggle and endurance. Her face was scarred by life, by sleepless nights, by constant worries. But there was something in that image that transcended all of that. There was dignity. There was genuine love in her gaze. There was a woman who had given her all for a dream that wasn't even hers. She grabbed the box containing the gift. She left the house, caught the bus, and watched the city pass by out the window. Her city. The one she knew from the streets she walked on her way to work. The auditorium was full when she arrived. It was magnificent. There were flowers at the entrance. Music was playing, and elegant people were everywhere. She found a seat in the last few seats, the only ones left to fill. The ones no one important would occupy. The seats that were always left. She sat and waited, her heart racing, the gift on her knees. She looked around. She saw mothers with jewelry sparkling on their wrists. She saw fathers in expensive designer suits. She saw grandmothers with handbags that cost more than a month's salary. And she saw herself, in her simple dress, with her calloused hands, with the colored glass necklace she had made herself. His heart sank, but he didn't cry. He never cried in public. He just prayed silently that everything would work out. When he heard Caio Fernando da Silva, his entire body stood up as if it had a spring. She stood up. She screamed. And in that scream was a whole life, 22 years of sewing laid into the night. Broom and bucket, every penny saved, every silent sacrifice, every time she said, yes, my son, you're going to be something. Every time she chose to work one more day instead of giving up. It was all in that scream that echoed throughout the entire auditorium. Caio listened. He saw his mother standing. He saw the simple blue dress. He saw the pure joy on her face, a joy that had nothing to do with sophistication or social status, and he felt ashamed, not of that woman, but of the truth she represented, of the reality that connected him to a world he was desperately trying to leave behind. His classmates were there, children of doctors, engineers, businessmen, judges, people of influence and power. Caio had befriended them throughout his 4 years of college. They were intelligent, well-educated, sophisticated. And at that moment, the cold thought settled in his mind, what will they think when they see my mother, a cleaning lady? In those simple clothes, with that country accent, with that naive demeanor. He lowered his head. He pretended he didn't see. He pretended he didn't recognize her. He pretended that the woman screaming his name with such love had nothing to do with him. Donna Lucia saw the movement. She recognized it in an instant, and understood in a split second that seemed like an eternity. Her son was ashamed of her. He slowly lowered his arms, as if losing weight. as if his entire life fell on his shoulders in that moment. He sat down, and silently, he looked at the box containing the watch that had cost him so many nights of work, so much sacrifice, so much sacrifice. The diploma was his. But the sacrifice had been all hers. The ceremony continued. Kaio took his diploma, smiled for the flashing cameras, and the whole world congratulated him. Donna Lucia just stood there, holding the box, watching her son transform into someone she didn't recognize. There was something that hurt more than the humiliation. It was the realization that he was truly ashamed. That this wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was something profound. After graduation, there was a reception in another area of the club. A chic, sophisticated space, with waiters circulating with imported drinks and gourmet snacks, prepared by French chefs. Theo introduced his friends to his parents, who arrived in a new imported car, who wore clothes from internationally recognized brands, who knew how to hold sophisticated conversations about stock market investments and international trips to places Lucia could never dream of visiting. "This is my father," Kaio would say with apparent pride. "He's the manager of a large company." And when it came time to introduce his mother, he would simply say, with his eyes downcast, "This is my mother," nothing more. No profession, no description, no context that dignified her in any way. Just, "This is my mother." As if that were the bare minimum necessary to publicly acknowledge her. When it was Donna Lucia's turn, Kaio went to her with his eyes averted, feigning casualness, pretending it was just another presentation of no importance whatsoever. "Hi, Mom, how are you?" She just waved. The smile had long since died. "Everything, son. What a beautiful day, right?" "Yes, it is." "So, I'm going to take the opportunity to talk to everyone. There are some teachers here I want to greet. There are also some friends I haven't talked to yet. You're welcome here, okay?" It wasn't a question. It was a request for her to stay in the corner. Invisible. Far from his life. Donna Lucia waved. Kaio quickly backed away, as if fleeing from something. She stood there, holding the box, watching her son laugh with his friends, be hugged by parents he'd never mentioned, become part of a world she'd paid for him to enter, and she was the price he was paying. When it was all over, Donna Lucia left the reception without saying goodbye, without picking up her son, without attempting one last connection. She took the bus home alone. The blue dress she had sewn with such care was stained with sweat and exhaustion. There was a woman sitting next to her on the bus. Donna Lucia didn't know her, but at that moment, she broke down. She wasn't crying, but her eyes were watering. The woman saw this and asked, "Is everything okay, daughter?" Lucia simply nodded, but she wasn't there. At that moment, she realized she had lost something she couldn't get back. The days that followed were the hardest of his entire life. When she got home, she took off the dress with extreme care. She hung it on her bedroom door, waiting for something that would never arrive. She placed the gift box on the dresser, unopened. She couldn't put it away. She couldn't watch it disappear. And she stared at it. The dress hanging on the door. The box on the bedside table. The loneliness of the little studio apartment that had been her home. She lay down on the bed without eating anything, and she stayed awake all night. She didn't cry. Donna Lucia had learned long ago that crying didn't change anything. That tears didn't pay bills. That emotion didn't nourish anyone. She just lay awake, in complete darkness, understanding something that had taken her 22 years to learn. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee love. It never did. Dedication doesn't guarantee recognition. It never has. Fighting doesn't guarantee victory. It never has. Sometimes everything you do just consumes you, and you're left empty. The months that followed were filled with deep, piercing silence. Donna Lucia woke up early, as always, went to work, came back, and slept. The routine was the same, mechanically the same, but something had changed inside her. A door had closed forever. A hope had died. Kaio didn't call. He didn't text. She called him, and the conversations were short, uncomfortable, and filled with a dangerous emptiness. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" "Everything, son." "So, how are you? How was the interview? It's okay. I'm looking for a job. I'm sending my resume. Talk to you later. Of course, my son, later. And she would hang up. And she would hold the phone in her lap, as if it were his hand, as if she could hold it there. A month passed, then 2, then 3 long months. Kaio started working at a high-end consulting firm. He earned well, but he still didn't visit his mother. Never. Sometimes I sent money to her account, a gesture that hurt more than it helped. Because money wasn't presents. It wasn't a hug. It wasn't recognition. Donna Lucia continued cleaning houses. Her hands were still rough. Her knees were still calloused from so much kneeling. Her back was complaining more and more. But now there was something new about her. A fatigue that wasn't just of the body. It was a fatigue of the soul. She spent her weekends alone. She watched TV without paying attention. She prayed. She thought about her son. And about the graduation party that had become a milestone when everything changed. When she realized she wasn't welcome in the world she had created for him with her own hands. I was watching TV one Saturday night when the phone rang. It was Kaio. "Hi Mom, how are you?" The tone was different. It wasn't the usual rush. It wasn't the coldness of the last few months. It was something heavier. Something that carried real weight. "Everything, son. So, how are you? It's been a while since we've talked properly." Kaio was silent. A long silence. So long that she thought the line had dropped. "Mom, can I come over tomorrow? I need to talk to you in person. There are things I need to say that I can't say over the phone. I need to look you in the eye." Donna Lucia felt her heart skip a beat. Something had happened. Something huge. "Sure, son. Are you coming home?" "Yes. In the evening, if you let me. After I get off work. Maybe around 8 o'clock. "Yes, I will. I'll wait for you." "What time? More or less?" "Around 8. Okay. It's okay, my son. You come in peace. I'll be here." He hung up and stared at the phone, trying to guess what had happened. Hours passed like that, in a searing suspense, imagining the worst, praying for better results. Kaio showed up the next day, late in the afternoon, knocking on the door with controlled force. Donna Lucia opened it and saw her son there, his face completely different. Thinner, tired in a frightening way, scared, in some profound way. His eyes were red, as if he'd been crying the entire way there. "Hi son, come in." He entered slowly, as if walking across hot coals. He sat on the old sofa she'd had for years, the one with arms worn from so much use, from so much living. He remained silent for a long time, staring at his hands, as if searching for the words written there. "Mom, I lost my job." Donna Lucia sat close to him, but not too close. There was space between them now. Space that shouldn't have been there, but there it was. "What do you mean, son? What happened?" It was good, the first feeling of longing. But then I started to question myself, to think it wasn't for me, that I didn't really belong there, that I was an imposter. There were people much more competent than me, who were born prepared for that. I made some mistakes, silly mistakes, mistakes of lack of attention, and they sent me away. They said I wasn't the profile they were looking for. Donna Lucia placed her hand on her son's shoulder, with extreme care. "And now, my son, what are you going to do? What is the plan?" "Now I'm lost, Mom. I don't know what to do. I have the diploma. I've done all my college. But I don't know what I really want, and I'm alone. My friends are all busy with their lives, with their own problems that no one wants to share. When you're no longer in a place of power, people disappear. It's like you disappear too. And I, ... He stopped. He took a deep breath. He put his hands to his face. "I was an idiot, Mom." Donna Lucia remained silent, waiting for the rest of the story. "At graduation, I was ashamed of you, and now I understand that was stupid. Completely stupid. You are the bravest person I know. You cleared the floor so I could be there, on that stage. You were the reason for everything I achieved. You cleared the entire path so I could walk with my head held high. And I was ashamed. As if you were the problem. As if your struggle was a dishonor to me." Tears began to stream down Kaio's face. Tears that held months of silent understanding, of regret that had grown with each passing day. I'm so sorry, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for being so ungrateful, so blind, such a coward. When I lost my job, I was alone. No one called me. No one reached out to me. I kept thinking about you. That day, at that party. I thought about how you showed up with that gift you'd saved for months. I thought about how I ignored you. How I pretended you didn't exist. Donna Lucia took a breath. She could cry now. She could explode with rage, with pent-up pain. She could say everything she had kept bottled up in these months of silence and hurt. Could destroy, but she didn't do that. Instead, she spoke in the calm voice she always had, the voice that carried the wisdom of someone who had suffered and learned to live with it. I cleaned the floor so you could walk with your head held high, son. I just didn't know it would be me you'd be ashamed of. The phrase hung in the air like an absolute sentence. Kaio lowered his head even further, as if he could disappear into that old sofa. But you're here now, and you saw. That's already something. That's already the beginning of something new. Donna Lucia took a deep breath. There was so much she could have said. So much pain she could have poured out. But she had learned that open wounds never heal. I forgive you, my son, he said in a voice that held true forgiveness. Forgiveness that came from someone who had suffered greatly, because forgiveness is easier than resentment, and because I always wanted the best for you, even when you hurt me. Even that day, Kyo looked up, and he saw in his mother's eyes not fury or hatred. He saw pure dignity. He saw the same strength that had sustained him throughout his life, even when he didn't realize it. He saw love, a love that transcended betrayal. He stood up and hugged his mother, and he cried. He cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child. He cried with his whole body. In that hug were years of weight, of misunderstanding, of construction and deconstruction, of misunderstood sacrifice, and of love that never ceased to exist, despite everything. But there was also a new beginning, a real possibility. Hope rekindled. Donna Lucia stroked her son's hair in silence. There were no words, just presence. Just the understanding that sometimes reconciliation is more important than revenge. Then, when the crying stopped, when Kaio could finally breathe properly, Donna Lucia slowly stood up. She walked to the wardrobe with steps that seemed to weigh tons. She opened it. She searched the box at the back. She took out the navy blue dress with sacred care. I wore this on your graduation day. Kaio looked at the dress. He touched the fabric carefully, as if it were made of something fragile, sacred, that could break. I carefully sewed each stitch. Each stitch had real meaning. Every time I threaded the needle, I prayed. I prayed that you would succeed. I prayed that you would never forget where you came from. I prayed that you would have a better life than I did. Theo touched the dress and felt the whole story there. He felt his mother's hands on the fabric, felt the dedication in every perfect seam, in every shining stitch. Then she went to the dresser. She opened the drawer slowly, carefully. She searched under the old handkerchiefs. She took out the box containing the watch, still wrapped, untouched, waiting for 22 months. And that's a gift I was never able to give you, because you didn't want to receive it. Because you were ashamed. Kaio took the watch in his hand. It was simple, beautiful, of genuine quality. Exactly the kind of gift a mother who understood value would choose. He unwrapped it carefully, as if unraveling an ancient mystery. Mother, you'll wear this when you go to a new interview, and when it shines on your wrist, you'll remember that you have a mother who believes in you, who always believed in you, even when you doubted yourself, even when you embarrassed yourself, even when you left me out. Kaio hugged his mother again. And this time, it wasn't a child's hug. It was the hug of a man who finally understood the value of his origins, who understood that no one was better or worse because of the hands they held, who understood that dignity is priceless, that it can't be bought in any store in the world. The months that followed were of profound and genuine transformation that no one expected. Kaio began his job search more carefully, more honestly with himself about what he truly wanted to do with his life. It wasn't about earning more or working in a fancy consulting firm again. It was about being well. It was about being at peace. He got a new job, a better one this time. One that left him at peace with his conscience. But the most important thing was completely different. He started spending time with his real mother. On Saturdays, he visited her religiously. He brought her groceries, things she loved, things she rarely bought for herself. They sat in the kitchen and ate something she prepared with that characteristic care only she possessed. They talked about everything. About work, about dreams, about fear, about the life he wanted to build, about the life she had built for him with her own hands. One night, while they were eating pasta that Donna Lucia had prepared with the love that only a mother can express, Caio said something that made her heart skip a beat. "Mom, I want to renovate the house. With my new salary, we can improve it here. Paint, fix the things that are broken. Make everything new. Make it beautiful. Make it our own." Donna Lucia looked at him. In her eyes, there was something Caio had completely forgotten. A glimmer of hope. Genuine hope. Hope that came from someone who had suffered so much but still believed in life. "We can do this, my son, really. I know we can do it." Weeks later, the small studio apartment had been transformed. There was new paint on the walls, a light, almost white hue that brought brightness and peace to the place. The broken things had been fixed by Caio and his new friend Gabriel. The window that didn't close properly now closed perfectly. The shower head, which had been a fine trickle, now poured hot water with a vengeance. There were fresh flowers in a vase on the coffee table, flowers Caio bought every week at the market. But the most important thing wasn't any of that. It was another kind of transformation. There was laughter echoing in that house that had been silent for so long, and real peace. There was a quality of air in the house that hadn't existed before, the quality of two people who finally understood each other, who finally truly saw each other. One day, Caio brought a friend to visit his mother. He was a colleague from his new job, a smart and polite young man named Gabriel. When they walked in, Donna Lucia was in the kitchen preparing carrot cake, which she made perfectly, with that special touch no one could replicate. Caio introduced her with a voice that carried something that had never existed before. Genuine pride, real pride, pride that came from the heart. "This is my friend Gabriel. Gabriel, this is my mother, Donna Lucia, the hardest working woman I know. And I'm not exaggerating in the slightest. My whole life, everything I've achieved, was because this woman here believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. When I was a child and thought I had no future, she believed, and she worked. Every day, without giving up. She cleaned floors, she sold cakes, she cleaned offices late at night, all for me, because she wanted me to be someone." Gabriel smiled genuinely, and Donna Lucia hugged the boy as if he were her son. And in that embrace was all the dignity that had once been denied, all the honor that should have been given from the beginning. Caio introduced her with pride. With the same pride she had, months earlier, shouted his name in an auditorium full of elegant people. But this time, Caio was not ashamed. This transformation repeated itself constantly. Caio began bringing friends, co-workers, and people he knew who he wanted to know true strength. And he always introduced his mother in the same way, with admiration, with respect, with clear and crystalline recognition of everything she had done for him. Caio's friends were impressed. It wasn't common to see a man like him, so honest about his origins, so grateful for the person who had single-handedly raised him, so willing to give credit where credit was due. Caio began taking his mother to dinners, on outings, to meet people. And each time he introduced Donna Lucia, he would tell something different, but always true. Stories of her courage, her sacrifices, her unwavering determination. On a Sunday afternoon, the two were sitting on the porch of the small, now beautifully renovated house. The sky was orange and pink, signaling the end of the day. There was a comfortable silence between them, the kind of silence that only exists between people who truly know each other, who truly love each other, who have finally understood each other deeply. "Mom, I still think about that day. At graduation," Donna Lucia looked at him tenderly. "I think about it too, my son. I think about it a lot, every day. I'm sorry, I really am. I still am. I know you feel it, my son. And that's what matters. Repentance is the beginning of change. And you have changed. But it shouldn't have come to this. I should have understood sooner. I should have seen sooner. Maybe. Or maybe you needed to learn the way you did. Life teaches differently to everyone. You learned through emptiness, through being alone. They stood in silence, watching the sunset paint the sky with warm colors. And in the silence, there was complete understanding. There was life. There was a genuine new beginning, without pretense, without masks, without pretense. Kaio's diploma was framed on the living room wall. It was a beautiful, impressive diploma, with the university's logo in gold. But next to it, Kaio had posted a photo of the two of them, embraced, laughing like they hadn't laughed in years, taken on a recent Saturday. There was no shame in that photo. There was only what had always been there: love, pure love, without conditions, without expectations. Donna Lucia would often run her hand over that frame. She touched the glass as if she could touch the moment frozen there. That moment when her son finally saw his mother, finally honored her, finally understood. Kaio, for his part, wore the watch he'd been given. He wore it to every interview, every important meeting, every time he needed strength. And every time he looked at it, he saw more than just a watch. He saw the nights of work. He saw the sacrifice. He saw the faith of a mother who never gave up. There are mothers who clean the floor, but they also clean their children's path. If this story touched you, leave a comment, like and share. Follow the channel for more stories that matter. See you next time.